It is Wednesday, October 18, 2023. The league championship series are fully underway, and yet the Miami Marlins found themselves as the biggest story in baseball on Monday morning when it was announced that Kim Ng will not return as the team's general manager in 2024. We're going to dissect it here again on Fish Unfiltered. I'm your host, Isaac Azout. I'm joined by our farm director today, Alex Carver, and our founder, Ely Sussman. Very special guest we have today, the man who broke the Kim Ng news, actually, Mr. Craig Mish. Craig, I know you're busy, but thanks for taking the time nonetheless.
Thanks for having me. It has been a wild 72 hours or so. I feel like I've fielded more calls and texts during this than some of the winter stuff. Still going, by the way. Interesting.
So just what have the last 72 hours been like? When did you realize something was not right here?
Yeah, I realized something was not right, as you guys should have realized something was not right, because you guys do a good job, but nobody seemed, well, I mean, I don't think nobody seemed, but everybody seemed to sort of miss the fact that the Marlins didn't do a year-end press conference. It just didn't happen. Maybe you guys did say that. I'm sorry if you guys did say that, but if not, shame on you. So as time started going by, I, was sort of like asking some questions like, when is this going to happen? And like, wasn't really getting a lot of response. And then, as doing this as long as I have on a lot of different levels, late last week, it sort of occurred to me like either Kim is going to have an extension coming here, or maybe something is not. Maybe she's not going to be with the organization. Like I just couldn't figure out what was going on. So that's kind of what happened. And then Monday morning, very early, I found out that she, had basically decided that she was going to leave the organization. So it was, I midweek last week, it was too weird. That they didn't talk. Like Kim didn't even say anything at the end of the year. And by the way, it was like Craig Counsell was talking, and David I don't know, the Brewers GM was talking, like Alex Anthopoulos. The season ends. He's the next day. He's doing it. I'm like, okay, something's going on here,
Yeah.
And so I was right about that. And apparently during that time there was like negotiation going on. Essentially, like that's obviously that's what was happening during that time. So how could Kim possibly do a year-end press conference with this going on? It didn't make a lot of sense.
Right.
So that was my first indication, and it proved to be correct.
Do you know about how long between when they made the apparent offer to extend her and when she decided to leave? Like how long it took her to decide to leave?
I don't know. I don't know exactly, but I think a few days. I'm not positive. I think it was a few days. I don't think it was like take it or leave it in like a second. I don't know that, but I don't think so though. I think it was a few days.
Right. Well, I guess I'll go ahead, Eli.
Well, Craig, through the reporting we've seen, and I guess through what you've been able to gather yourself, it's kind of been painted as a simple conflict between Kim and Bruce, a disagreement in terms of how they want to move forward. That's what Kim personally said in her statement. Is it that simple? Or are there any other characters involved with this that we should keep in mind? Or was this really just a one-on-one between these two who couldn't iron out exactly where they wanted to go forward that could keep them both satisfied with it?
Yeah, Eli, I've said a few things on SportsGrid, and I noticed that you guys tweeted those out the other day. I've been pretty quiet on the subject. I haven't done a column or anything like that, and I don't plan to. It's a really difficult situation all around because unlike the way that this has been reported, I see both sides. I do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it as black and white as the way that it's been covered. And I certainly absolutely respect every journalist. I think that you guys and anybody else watching knows the number one rule that I have in journalism is I never talk poorly about other journalists and I never comment on other people's work. But that being said, I do think that there is another story to tell. I don't think it's as simple as just what transpired over a few days. And I think that anybody who thinks that that's really the way that this all happened isn't really in touch with the club and isn't really in touch with everything that's transpired over the last few years. That being said, I certainly have expressed that I totally understand where Kim is coming from.
Mhm.
I can totally understand her wish to either be extended or have full and total control of what happens in the organization. If you ask me specific comments about other reporting, I will answer those here because clearly I have not reported anything, and I'm happy to answer any questions you guys may have. But what I would say is there were a few things that I read that, regardless of being accurate or not, and I'm not questioning anybody's accuracy, I thought some of it was pretty harsh, and I thought some of it was unfair too. There are still employees working for the Miami Marlins that, regardless of whether Kim had a good or bad relationship of, I don't think anybody would ever want to be in the position to have to defend themselves from potentially being fired from an article. I just, it just really, regardless of the scenarios, that stuff just did not really sit well with me. If I got access to that information, I don't know if I would have published it or not. I'm not blaming anybody in terms of journalism because, again, that's crazy access to inside baseball, inside a club. Maybe I would have done it as well. I don't know, but the whoever gave that information to the journalist who reported it, I mean, shame on you. Like, if I mean, that is like some real calling for firing type stuff. I don't know. Eli, that particular thing just did not sit well with me. Regardless, probably all accurate.
Well, let me ask you something, Craig, because it seems to me what was reported on ESPN was that Bruce was interested in hiring a president of baseball ops. That position had been vacant for the past 6 years, actually. When Jeter was here, he was a CEO, and that's who Kim reported to. And I guess it makes sense that he would want to replace or, hire another one for that position. Was the transparency and communication there between Bruce and Kim saying, hey, we're eventually going to have to fill that role and it's not going to be by you? Was that, spoken about the last year or two?
I don't know that it was spoken about the past year or two, but I think that there are a lot of organizations that operate in that manner. And I suppose you can ask yourself, if you are the owner of the Marlins and this is something that you want to do, but you want to keep your general manager as well. I'm speaking in hypotheticals, but you want to keep your general manager as well, because there's no question Kim did a good job as general manager. I mean, no one could sit here and even argue that. It's inarguable that they had a good year. They went to the postseason, and despite some of the signings and stuff like that, it was made up for the trades. I'd love to get into all that too. I think that stuff is inarguable, but if you are the owner of the team, what is the best course of action at that point? I would ask you, Isaac, if you were the owner, if you were Bruce Sherman, what would you do? Would you tell Kim in a meeting that we're going to hire a president of baseball operations, or would you not, and just hand Kim the the mutual option? Would you hand Kim just the option, say sign it, and then hire a president of baseball operations afterward? So I think the answer is easy on that one, right? Like you're gonna say, hey, this is what I want to do. But as far as like conversations that had previous to that, I'm not aware of that. Certainly up until the point that Kim resigned, I felt I had a good relationship with Kim. So she never expressed that to me previously. But very clearly, I don't think that Bruce Sherman just all of a sudden out of nowhere came up one day and said, Kim, let's come have a seat. Oh, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking I'm going to hire a president. Obviously, this is something that has been thought about previously. Now, how long? I can't say. A week, a month, a year, 2 years. I have no idea. But I do know that the preference does seem to be in the organization to operate like a lot of other teams in baseball, which is to have a president and a general manager. So that's my long-winded answer to that one.
We've spoken about it, Craig, in the past, that when they first took over, Bruce Sherman and Derek Jeter, the ideal thing would have been to keep Michael Hill as president of baseball operations and have Kim Ng as the GM. So my question is, did Bruce consider simply promoting Kim to the president of baseball operations role and hiring a new general manager?
I obviously that was not the case, because then maybe at that point Kim would have accepted. I don't believe that to be the case. I believe what has been reported and what I know, which is that Kim was offered a chance to remain as the general manager of the Marlins in the same position that she was, with the contract that she had, with an additional year on it, with full and total autonomy over handling the everyday minutia, 40-man, 26-man roster, trades, free agencies. And she would handle that, and whoever else came in would handle everything else potentially in the organization. And my also understanding is that if there was any difference of opinion between whoever would have come in and Kim, that on that part of the deal, no one's going to have complete autonomy over that. That would have had to go up to a higher level to make that decision. So Kim essentially has full control as the general manager, just as she did before. That wouldn't change. But what would change is whoever, and by the way, there is no person, but whoever this hypothetical person would be, would come in and do all the other things, I guess, that the ownership wanted to fix or make better.
So technically, it would have been a demotion, correct?
It would have been a demotion in the sense that somebody else above her would have had a hand in helping make decisions on some of the roster stuff, but inevitably, she still would have had control over the roster. She still would have had that. So I mean, technically, Isaac, I mean, I guess so, because then there's another voice that's above her that's weighing in. But I don't think that person would have. In fact, I know that person, whoever would have come in, could not like overrule her on the general managership of the Marlins.
Do you think just knowing like the history of Kim's career here, when they first got here, like Isaac just said, you've said this before to all of us, that it wasn't just her making the decisions, right? That it was Greenlee and it was all these other people that were like grouping together, like, to make the decisions that were going to be final, right? You told us that before. So do you think, just looking at this and, of course, after Jeter left, that changed and Kim was in charge and everything else, do you think that she thought it was like going backwards to have somebody else that's over her to make decisions? Is that maybe, knowing Kim, do you think that's probably what she thought?
Yeah, I'm sure. And look, I don't know to what value, Alex, an extension played into this too. I don't know the answer to that. Maybe she was expecting an extension. Maybe she was expecting to walk into a meeting and having a paper put in front of her that says 3 years and X million to be GM. Maybe that's part of it too. And look, nobody wants to feel in life like that somebody's coming in over them when they feel like they've done a good job. I think in life you have to feel like you have self-worth and you have to know what your value is. And clearly Kim does and should have a very high value of herself. But you still, at the end of the day, have a boss, not just in baseball or football or basketball. You have one with Fish on First, and I have one at SportsGrid, and those people make the decisions based on what they want to do. And in this case, this is the ownership of the Miami Marlins deciding that this is the direction that they wanted to go. I don't blame Kim for doing it and walking away from, obviously as a general manager, potentially a lot of money as well. We'll just have to see for the Marlins and for Kim, by the way, if this was the proper decision in the end, because I would assume that Kim will be a general manager again in Major League Baseball. I'm sure that James Click, who got fired from the Houston Astros, assumes that he will be a general manager in Major League Baseball again. And it's not an apples and oranges conversation. There's only a certain amount of these jobs. And when you have them, and you choose to leave them, and you don't have another job waiting for you, that's the risk that you take when you leave. So we will see in the end how the Marlins perform without Kim, and we'll see Kim inevitably at some point become an executive in baseball, general manager, I'm sure, again, and we'll see her how she does in that new role, whatever that ends up being, because she will clearly end up at some point, as I would think, as a general manager again.
Yeah. Well, I guess the next question we can touch on possible candidates to.
Well, I want to go to something before we get there, the search, because in the interim, assistant GM Brian Chadden, he's now the interim GM. And if we assume, we'll get into the search in a moment, if it's going to be a broad search, then there will be some sort of things on an interim basis that he'll have to make decisions on while the offseason gets underway. I don't think people realize, Craig, like how long Brian Chadden has been in the organization. Like, he has endured from the previous ownership, through the Jeter era, through at least for the moment, through this transition as well. And now he's one of 3 assistant GMs. He over Greenlee and over Ozzo Campbell. He's the one that has this interim title. Do you have any insight into one, like how he's survived all this turnover that everybody else has not, and what exactly he brings to the table?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So, Brian is a collaborator. He's a communicator. He's extremely well liked for decades within the organization. He's also very good with the rules of Major League Baseball and the transactions and sort of, making sure that everything is operating. So I'm not surprised that this is the direction that the Marlins chose to go. But I also do want to be very clear here that while he is the acting general manager, make no mistake about it, there's going to be somebody that's going to come in and immediately become the president of baseball operations to take total control. So that's going to happen. The second thing that I would say is Dan Greenlee is there. Ozzo Campo is there. They have a lot of very capable people in the organization that remain. And collaboration may not even be the correct word for it. It's going to be a massive collaboration for all of them to put their heads together to get arbitration figured out and to get some of the offseason figured out, the opt-outs. I'm sure that's going to be a very interesting topic. I don't know if they will have somebody in place for the winter meetings. I certainly would think, but I can't guarantee. I don't, again, this sort of caught me by surprise too. But I think I don't know what a fair timeline is. I know that will be the next question, and I don't know. Is it a month? Is it 2 months? It just depends on how the search goes and who they inevitably decide to choose.
What does this mean for Skip Schumaker?
Well, I mean, look, there's no question that Skip and Kim had a very collaborative relationship.
Yeah.
And, Skip publicly has said so many times how much he's appreciated Kim and her leadership and just him being able to operate the clubhouse and operate the team and not have a lot of influx, a lot of meddling going on, which sometimes can happen with a general manager and manager. Skip, I think in the end, when the smoke clears, I think everything will move forward. I can imagine naturally when something like this happens and you lose somebody that's a confidant or somebody that is inevitably your friend, it's going to be a tough transition at the beginning. But, Skip, nothing in ever life is a guarantee, but I would 99.9999999% guarantee that Skip will be the manager next year. I would almost guarantee if he wants to be the manager of the Marlins that he'll have his chance to be the manager in the future with the Marlins too. But look, naturally, that's not a question for now. It's a question for the future as well. But certainly I feel for Skip. I thought he had a great year managing the club. Yeah. And then all of a sudden there's a shock to the system and the organization. But in the end, guys, we've seen this happen in baseball so many times and it just ends and then new things happen. And I mean, we spent so little time talking about the departure of Mike Hill. And we were just like, yay, Kim Ng, do we want to go back there and remember that time and everything that happened like right after that too? It was really not pretty. And I feel like that kind of gets lost in this whole conversation, how the outrage is like insane right now, yet the same exact thing happened when Mike Hill made the postseason. And it just was like widely accepted that this is okay to do, that it's perfectly fine to stop the train after the playoffs. Let's bring in a brand new general manager who, clearly, qualified for the job and all those really good things and breaking history in terms of being the first woman to ever be a general manager, first Asian American, no question, but also had not been in a front office in 10 years. Let's do this. Let's just drop her in and let her run and just see what happens. And what was the result of the Marlins the first 2 years? A lot of crap. It was not pretty for the first couple of years. This is not an indictment on Kim. The reality is they lost so many games in 2021 and 2022. And it's like, we don't even discuss that. Where is that piece?
Yeah.
Are we really gonna miss the real story here that everybody is missing? The best story of all is that Kim Ng broke every barrier in the world, and this became a national story, and it's awesome and it's amazing. and she has paved the way for people all over the world to do things they never could. But nobody talks about the story of her coming in and just being like, holy bleep, what am I going to do? I'm now the GM of the Marlins. And going from that to where she is now, doing such a great job. I mean, nobody even has a clue what went on that first year that Kim was the general manager of the Marlins. Whether or not she would admit it, I have no idea. She was not prepared at that moment to be the general manager of the Marlins, to walk in and have Derek Jeter, who had never been a GM in his life, be her boss, and Gary Denbo, who she couldn't get along with. He had never been in a position like that before. And yeah, you go ahead and you be the GM and go ahead and do all these things. Like, who could ever be prepared for that? So why was it such a shock that the Marlins were just brutal for 2021 and 2022?
Wasn't.
Broke out of it in 23, without a doubt, thanks in part to Kim, no question. But I think the story is how you go from not just as a woman, an Asian American woman, how you go from being so in a spot where you are wide-eyed, haven't been in a front office in 10 years. Oh my gosh, I'm the GM. Let me just not mess anything up that's been happening, to now give me total control of the organization. I mean, that to me is the baseball story. That is the most incredible story of all.
That is the other side of it, and I completely agree. I think the one difference when it was Hill, the one that was not brought back, was that it was always expected that he was going to be gone eventually. They were just honoring that contract from the previous regime, but nobody expected anyone from that regime to continue on with Sherman and Jeter. So I guess that's the one difference I could see. But you're absolutely right. That is the other side.
I don't know that I see it that way. Mike Hill had been with the organization for 20 some odd years.
Yep.
Just because Derek Jeter in the moment didn't like what Mike Hill had to say, he decided that I'm going to just let him go, and I'm just going to bring in somebody else, not interview anybody else at all for the job, and let me call somebody. Hey, what do you think? Okay, great. This is the person. And then you're gonna work for me. I'm gonna be the one that's in charge, making all the trades, do everything else. What's your experience? I got none too.
Exactly.
This is gonna be awesome. I mean, what did people think was gonna happen? And so we were celebrating it at the time for the right reasons, and the right reasons were Kim Ng changed the world. I mean, Kim Ng changed things that nobody else can, and Derek Jeter is responsible for that. There's no question. But Derek Jeter's responsibility to the world was more important than his responsibility to the Marlins. and here we are, and that's the dynamic that is really the story after all these years.
Yeah, well, as you touched on there, that I think is going to be critical to this. Even though I'm not satisfied with what the Marlins did here and what Bruce did here. Ultimately, it's a matter of who comes in next. It could be a wide variety of people. It could be another woman. It could be another person that has even more baseball experience than Kim. We just don't know at this stage. So, I mean, as long as it is an extensive search process, as long as they are thorough with it, and as long as they get cooperation, hopefully, from a lot of the best candidates out there, that's going to be pretty crucial to me. As you said, in Kim's case, she was handpicked by Jeter. Jeter reached out. Jeter brings her in. And even though it was a really thrilling moment and proved to be a big difference, that's not the ideal way to do things. You want to be as thorough as possible right now, especially if Bruce's position is that there were pretty deep issues with player development, with amateur drafting. Like, as long as it is a thorough process, that's going to be a lot more important this time around, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, there's no argument. I mean, it is now all on the ownership to get this right. There's no now it's all now new. Like, there's no looking back and saying, oh, is this person's fault or is that person's fault or I didn't like this. I mean, it is all now fresh and new. The slate is clean, more or less. The slate is clean. So yeah, so whoever this new president has to come in and fit the mold for the way that the ownership wants things to be done. So Eli, they absolutely have to get it right. And listen, I saw some of your comments, and look, everybody's entitled to their opinion as to how this went down. I have a more measured approach to it, maybe because I know more than most of the whole situation, and I certainly understand that everybody should have an opinion. I just think that a lot happens over the course of several years. It's not all about just 2 or 3 days. It's not all about just one season. And I think I've made it perfectly clear, and I'll do it again. Kim can be the GM of any team in Major League Baseball. She's proven it this year. She's proven it. But just because that is the case, it enables her to feel a certain way about things, but it doesn't guarantee you anything in life. You can feel bad. You can feel slighted. It's happened to me too. One time, let me tell you a story. One time I was working at Sirius XM, and I got a call from another company. I don't know why I'm going to leave their name out of it, but I'm going to leave their name out of it. I got a call from another company. They wanted me to come in, and they wanted me to do their fantasy content for baseball. So we negotiated this whole deal. We negotiated a contract. I had to go to Sirius XM. I had to get them to waive my non-compete. We want you to lead the whole thing, right? We want you to do this. And the assistant to the boss, here's your contract. I got emails. Here's the money. Sounds good. Sent the equipment to the place. Here's where I'm going to do the shows. Day before I start, other boss calls. Cannot hire you. What? I've already been hired. You said I was amazing. You said I did a great job. What are you talking about? Well, somebody else says that that we can't do it. So I'm sorry. But what do you mean? I thought I was. Guys, we were gonna have a party at my house to celebrate this with my family. A cake. Hey, congratulations on your new job. Whatever. There's no lower feeling than being thought in terms of self-worth, how great you think you are, to have somebody else essentially tell you, we do think you are great. We think you're awesome, but not as awesome as you think you are. And this is what life is about. And so it's just how you bounce back from that. In Kim's choice, hey, I'm going to walk away from this loot, from this job, and I'm going to show these people that I am worth what I think I am, and I'm going to go do it somewhere else. Well within her right. Also well within the right for the team and the owner, who's got billions of dollars, to say, hey, I own the team. This is the way that I want to operate. So I just don't understand why people don't get that. I mean, this is what life is about. Life isn't always fair. Life mostly sucks. But you find a way to get over the bad parts. You turn a negative into a positive. And in both cases, Kim Ng and the Miami Marlins are going to go about their separate ways. And one side's going to say, I'll show you. The other side is going to say, I'll show you. And in a few years, we will come back and we'll evaluate how it worked out.
So then what changed in the last 2 years of Kim having full control? And she obviously, the last 2 years were really bad. This year was great. But what changed this year that they wanted to get a president of baseball ops now? Why not? When Jeter left, obviously, I think he was no experience either. I think they should have had one with him here. But especially with him gone, there was no one for Kim to report to besides Bruce Sherman. Why does he want someone now?
Isaac, how do we know at that very moment that decision wasn't made right there? We don't know. It could have been. It just took this long to get to it. It's very possible. I don't know the answer to it. It could have happened a year. It could have happened 6 months ago. I don't know the answer to that. When it
after
happened.
A playoff appearance?
What's that, say again?
After a playoff appearance? Isn't that strange timing?
Well, obviously the decision wasn't made 2 days before Bruce Sherman spoke to Kim. Clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, Isaac, you're smart. I mean, obviously not, right? Like, I mean, if that's the case, the decision was clearly made before then, but I cannot tell you when. I don't know.
Right.
Was it a week or two or a month or a year? I have no idea. But the idea clearly was to bring in somebody to oversee the parts of the organization that needed to be stepped up. And that,
absolutely.
And guys, I mean, Barry had it in his column today. Okay.
Yeah.
It's very important. And I said this on SportsGrid too. I'm sorry to say the Marlins are never going to have a $300 million payroll. It's never going to happen. Okay? It is never going to happen. I don't think it ever will happen. There must be players from the minor leagues that are drafted and players that they spend some money internationally that play for the Marlins.
Yeah.
This cannot be every year, hey guys, drop back, throw a pass. Whoa, Johnny Cueto. All right, great, 10 million. Hey, let's get Jeet Segura. Great. Avisel Garcia, let's try you. 50 million. It cannot be like this. And they had not one player in this year's opening day starting lineup that was drafted by them or signed internationally. Not one. Not a single one. Is there any other team in Major League Baseball that operates like this? I don't think so. I don't think so. That's not Kim's fault. It's just the reality of where they're at. That must change. They have to get players who are being developed properly in the right way. I don't know what is going on with this player development here. Pitchers have obviously been pretty good, but what have they had to do? Let's take Pablo Lopez. Let's trade him. Let's take Zach Gallen.
Right.
Okay, let's trade him. Like, who's next? Jake Eater. Okay, let's trade him too. I mean, this is not a sustainable way to run a business, just trading away all the guys that you think that could be good in the farm system. Max Meyer. Oh, Brandon Marsh. He looks good. Let's trade him. I mean, literally, this is what's happening in order for them to field the team. Get to the deadline. Oh, what do we do? Let's get Josh Bell. You think that they could pull that off again next year? Oh, let's just make more trades. Oh, this is good. Let's put Kim in the same spot here. Hey, Kim, go ahead and fix all the problems again 2 years in a row. Go trade all the prospects that you have that were drafted, and go get us some guys that could get us into the postseason. Seems easy to do, right? I don't think so.
So how much different? Obviously, it's probably going to be different pretty quickly. How much different do you think this offseason looks with whoever's going to take this job? How much different do you think this offseason looks than next offseason or than past offseason? Sorry. And as a follow-up to that, who in this player development system, you're probably going to say Svalek, but who in this player development system is also a candidate to be replaced as well?
Obviously, I'm not going to do that, Alex. I'm not going to do people who are going to be fired on this. That I'm not going to do. But look, the off season in terms of free agent signings, I don't think that they're going to just stop with the progress that they made, but the track record of not just Kim, the organization in recent years of signing players to multi-year contracts has not gone well. I would be very surprised if they go down that road again. I mean, I could absolutely see somebody getting a 2-year deal like that. I could see them going back to try to get Josh Bell again. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely could see that stuff. I just don't see this offseason somebody coming in and saying, yeah, you know what the answer is? Let's give another Avisel Garcia contract out to somebody else, 4 years, $60 million. Something. I personally don't see that happening. I don't know what their payroll figure is going to be. I have no idea. Probably a story for a later day, but very clearly, another element of the organization that, I mean, it's not a mistake, but we got to call it what it is. They got way too many arbitration eligible players, and no one's going to look at that and say that the Marlins are spending money, but in the reality, they are. They're going to be giving out a lot of money in arbitration this offseason. They have, a dead contract in Avi Garcia. They have, unfortunately, a one dead year contract in Sandy. I mean, these are all things that they're going to be. It has to be factored in going into next year.
I guess now we could sort of touch on some candidates. Do you see them promoting from within, first of all, to either the GM or president of baseball operations department, whether it's Oz or Greenlee or anyone else?
My only thing could be, I don't know the answer. My opinion would be no. My opinion is they go outside the organization. That's my opinion only.
Okay. And then the next thing I want to touch on is, our good old friend David Samson, nothing personal with David Samson. He mentioned he really advocated for Michael Hill, who is obviously vice president of on-field operations for Major League Baseball. I think that's a perfect candidate. I've already asked you, is that in the realm of possibilities?
Mike and I have known each other for, I don't know, is it 30 years? I think I've known Mike 30 years. I don't think Mike's going to be the president of the Marlins. But I do love Mike, and I think Mike loves me, but I don't think he's going to end up being president of the Marlins. Just my thought. I don't think so, but nothing against Mike. Mike never should have been. Mike never, ever from the movie Friday, ever should have been fired by Derek Jeter. Never should have happened. This, listen, if bringing Kim was great. Maybe they could have brought in Kim, to work with Mike, or maybe her being that would have worked. He's a president, she's a GM, right?
Great.
And then maybe who knows? A story, I guess, for another podcast. But love Mike with all my heart. He's the greatest, one of my favorites of all time in baseball. I don't think it's going to be him this time.
Yeah. There's only one other team right now that has comparable front office openings. The Red Sox also looking for president of baseball operations and a GM. They got a head start on their search, and there's reports that that's not actually going very well. But regardless, that is an opportunity out there with a bigger market team coming off a worse season. How do you think the desirability of this job compares to that? Is this a better job to you than Boston, like all things considered? Because
Right.
they're very different. But right now, that's that's what the Marlins have to keep in mind. Like a lot of the candidates that interviewed for that or were targeted for that, those are probably names that are in Bruce's mind. So that context, that comparison is kind of weighing heavy on my mind.
Right. So I would say, Eli, that, and I understand for you to say that it doesn't seem like it's going well. The difference between now and maybe 15, 20 years ago is every single name gets reported. Whereas years ago, this just the dynamic of social media and this stuff didn't happen. And the more and more we get with more newsbreakers on social media and people who are reporting, we're finding out about every single name who interviews everywhere. So I personally don't think that that's a fair assessment with the Red Sox. If they interview somebody and they do their search and that person doesn't want the job and it ends up being not John Daniels, I think was one of the names, not Derek Falvey, I think was another one of the names. I think Thad Levine, you guys will have to correct me if that was one of the names too. And these are, high level executives who just have chosen to not be there. My understanding is it's very hard right now in the market just for presidents and general managers. These people have families. They understand what the job entails. And it's not just being the GM. There's especially the president. There's just a lot more encompassing of the job, and it's not. And maybe it's easier for a single man or woman to be able to do the gig. And I think from the Marlins perspective, I don't know this to be true yet, Eli, but I certainly could see a scenario where there are going to be people out there that are going to be clowning the Marlins because this person interviewed and this person didn't get the job, and maybe there's a few names that it's going to go in the same way as the Marlins too, but I don't necessarily look at that as a success or failure. To me, it just looks like they're interviewing and doing a search and interviewing a lot of people for the job. So I just personally don't look at that situation in the same way. And again, with the Marlins gig, I absolutely, in the end, when it's all over, just like I always do, I'll do my assessment. I'll speak to the people who were involved, just like I did with the manager, and I'll find out if it was not a thorough search or if a lot of people turned down the job or if it was tough. I don't anticipate that being the case. So I don't indict the Red Sox for speaking to 1 million people and 1 million people thus far saying no. There's also a window of time that you have to make a decision on a person, and you have to complete it within that time to speak to somebody else too. It's just something else to keep in mind.
As a last for me, it's my last question, Craig. Thank you for doing this again. But my last question for you would be, as the search gets underway, or maybe it already is, if you had to,
it is underway.
If you had to form an opinion on how you think or what kind of candidate you think they target, do you think they go with more the younger, more analytically driven candidate, or do they go with an older, maybe tenured baseball person? Like, what do you in which direction do you see it going?
Look, I don't know about age or gender or any of that stuff, but I think that the candidate will come from a high level position in a front office in Major League Baseball. That's my guess as to potentially the way that could go. But I don't have any insight, certainly to that. I know that, look, we're all going to be talking about the same names. I would tell you that, look, this is not a connection to the Marlins at all, just to be clear. But the fact that Thad Levine chose to interview with the Red Sox, that's a really big step in all of the processes, because Thad Levine, who I like very much, he's been on my shows before, has turned down a lot of requests in the past. So that really perked my eyes up and ears up a little bit to see that he was willing to do that interview with the Red Sox. If they can secure him, certainly that's a huge get, I think, for Boston, the way that they have run the Minnesota Twins, he and Derek Falvey, for all of those years. So we're going to learn together. I don't know through this process that I'm going to be doing this guy turned it down, that guy turned it down. I don't see the benefit to it. I understand that there are going to be people that are going to do it, and there are going to be reporters out there much better than me who are just going to say, this person turned it down and this person interviewed, they thought it sucked, they turned it down. I don't think that's going to be me. What I will do is hopefully give everyone who the new person is. That, inevitably, I want the actual piece of the news as opposed to the thing that didn't matter.
Well, when you say an executive in a high level position, in Major League Baseball, does that sound like James Click music to you?
Again, I would be guessing, Isaac. I'm not going to go through the names yet because I don't know who's been interviewed. Even if I did, I don't think that I would do it. I don't see, I don't see how it helps me. It's only going to hurt me in the industry to be leaking that sort of stuff if I do know. And right now, I would tell you that I don't know the answer to that. I think it's fair to say that there's certainly a chance that we don't know the person, like we don't know the name. Maybe this is somebody new that has never been a president before. I think you have to explore that too. I think all avenues are going to be explored with this, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be, and we're just going to learn together. My hope is for the Marlins is that by the winter meetings, I think that that's fair. I hope that by then, I know it seems like a long time from now, but I hope by then that they have somebody in place, because that's sort of not just the trading stuff and free agent stuff. That's kind of the moment where you're meeting the media and you're doing, you're not saying anything, and generally speaking, nothing even happens at the winter meetings mostly.
Yeah,
But
for real.
I guess last year a little bit happened, but but generally speaking, that's like the hey, here's who I am and nice to meet you kind of stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
hopeful. I'm hopeful by then that that's the case. You guys may think it should happen earlier. I don't know, but I'm hopeful for the winter meetings.
Yeah, that was my question because the GM meetings are what, early November, I believe. And then
Very unrealistic. Maybe
of
maybe it happens,
course,
but I mean, this is what are we in? Where this is like, do they have
October,
2 weeks
yeah.
to do that? Then I don't. Maybe they can. Maybe they pull it off. I don't know.
And who is helping Bruce Sherman? Is it just Bruce Sherman conducting these interviews and doing this search, or does he have anyone to help him
I
along the
don't
way?
know.
Because
Yeah,
I have
I
no
don't
idea.
know. I mean, my guess is that he has people that he trusts in the organization and maybe outside to do that. I don't have the answer to that. I don't know who's involved in it. I mean, Kim did the interviews for the manager,
Right.
and she interviewed Skip Schumaker, and then I believe I think Bruce Sherman was Bruce Sherman was involved
Mm-hmm.
in hiring Skip Schumaker. Of course, it was his manager too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he was involved there at the end. My guess is he'll be involved in throughout this process.
Right. Well, I guess the last thing for me would just be because Bruce just spoke so highly of Kim. The whole the clinching night in Pittsburgh, and the after, I guess before the postseason, we were speaking on the field, and during the regular season, nothing but great things for Kim. Are you surprised that they just couldn't come up to an agreement? Whether however you want to slice it, were you just surprised that there was no agreement made?
Everybody should be surprised that there's no agreement made. Yeah, but the bigger and I'm not surprised that there's disappointment around the industry, and I'm not surprised to read columns and articles about how the Marlins effed it up and they could have worked it. I mean, look, I knew all that was going to come. I mean, I knew it was, but I guess in the end, with the way that I think I know that the Marlins sort of want to operate in the future, where you see kind of where their payroll is, and maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. I don't know which direction it's going to go. I just know how important the homegrown talent has to be for this organization, guys. Like we're gonna. What's funny is I talk to people, and you guys have probably said this before too, that they want to be the Rays. Oh, the Marlins want to be the Rays. They just want to be the Rays. They want to get that amount of people, and they just want to be the Rays. Then you hear people say the Marlins cannot be the Rays. I mean, look at that huge front office the Rays have, and look at the way that they've done it. And they've, Andrew Friedman and Chaim Bloom and all these people. They've look at those executives they have. So I don't think it's as like cut and dry as they want to be the Rays, but that's like the space that the Marlins kind of have to operate on, the Rays space, the Cleveland space, the Milwaukee space. So it doesn't really answer your question, Isaac, but I'm not surprised in the sense that is so important, and maybe Kim could have operated in that space as the president, or maybe she could have. I don't know the answer to that, but they made the decision to say, hey, we got to do this the way that we're going to do it, and we cannot worry about anybody else's feelings. Like
Yeah.
this is how it's got to be done. And for the trades and all the success that was made by Kim too, the burger trade, right? the Josh Bell trade, whatever with Robertson. Like those were the 3 trades, I think. Am I missing anything?
The Jorge Lopez trade that will
whatever. Right. Okay.
Jonathan Davis.
Those were all solid, but guys, like the free, but this is money taken from the organization. Not a lot, some would argue, but the free agents were not good at all, and it was very fortunate that Kim went in and fixed all that stuff that she did before the season. Like, let's not forget that too. Like, she patched that up. It's just, Isaac, it's not, it's maybe it's a slam dunk for everybody that this should have just been done exactly the way that everybody wants it, but that's not the way that the Marlins wanted it to work.
No,
and there's people that have commented on my post on SportsGrid that said, okay, and it's very interesting. They said, well, what Craig is saying is that they don't want to spend money anymore, and they want to just draft guys and make sure they all go to the big leagues, use the international money and make sure they're all there. That's not true. That's not true. Bruce Sherman said that if they're in it, he'll spend money. Whenever they're in it, this year, they were in it. Maybe it wasn't as much money as you guys wanted to spend, but they were in it. He spent money. Got Josh Bell, got David Robertson, spent some money, right? Got rid of Gene Segura, did all those things. So the goal is for the Marlins to be in it every year. And then if they're in it, go get the other pieces to win the to win the postseason and win the championship. So look, I'm shocked, definitely upset. From the beginning, like I built a good relationship with Kim, guys. Like it's I'm gonna have to get to know a new executive. This isn't. What do you think I'm thinking? Like, oh man, like here we go. Like, but in the end, that's the dynamic of it. I think I made clear, by the way, on my other stuff that I had not heard from Kim at all since this has happened, but I finally did today. But I finally did today. I finally heard back today. So I'm not going to obviously share any of that, but so I thought that maybe like it was like we were in bad standing or something like that, but I don't think so. So
excellent.
Yeah, you have to be able to do both, right? Spending money and building from within. And the Marlins have had, Craig knows, we all know the Marlins have had a lot of trouble building from within. So that's what they got to fix. And hopefully this is the right way to do it. See who comes in next and see how they do.
Yeah, and just to be clear, obviously, Bruce Sherman wanted to do it, and that's probably would have been a great decision. The more brain power you have in that front office, the better, and it would have only helped, in my opinion. So I was surprised to see Kim not be satisfied with that position, but like you said, she's allowed to do whatever she wants, and Bruce is allowed to structure his front office however way he wants. So I guess unless you guys have anything else, I think that'll do it for Craig. I guess one more.
Yeah, one other thing. This doesn't speak necessarily to the owner of the Marlins or anything else. It just speaks. I've had this conversation now with a lot of people, with just life and sports and just everything else. We go through years in all of the sports, the NBA and Major League Baseball. I don't know enough about the NHL to comment, but in the NFL as well, where we always are, on the owners. They're never good. They always suck. They're not doing the right thing. And sometimes maybe that's accurate. And sometimes maybe that's inaccurate. But in the end, we can all yell and scream. But the bottom line is that the owners in sports have gotten there for a reason. They've got billions and billions of dollars, and they can do whatever they want. And that's never going to change in sports. It has nothing to do with the Marlins. Just look in the last 30 years of things that we've seen that we just didn't like initially. You guys mentioned James Click as one thing. I mean, they won the World Series. He's not the GM anymore. It looked insane. The Astros are back in the American League Championship Series. We're not even talking about that anymore. In the moment, it sucks. And because we've all built relationships with people and we feel hurt, we feel a little betrayed. We're like, what is this guy doing? It's crazy articles coming out. This guy's the worst. Wow, And then it's like, how did these people get to this point? They were so smart. What were they just? I mean, maybe some of them got family money and they were handed billions of dollars. I guess that's probably true too. But in the end, it sucks to say, but life is just not fair. And a lot of times the owners with that kind of money can choose to play with their toy however they want to play with it.
I saw one that said it was like a slap in the face to fans. Like, come on, this is the business of baseball. This stuff happens. Like, it sucks, yeah, but it's not a slap in the face to fans. They went in a different direction.
It's
It
not.
happened. So
Look, everybody could continue to be outraged. Totally. Look, I was very surprised too. Again, in what I'm trying to do, if I'm still going to be doing this with the Marlins for who knows how long, it is better for me to have Kim than it is to not. There is no question. She's helped me quite a bit last year, without a doubt. I mean, come on. I mean, let's guys get real. I mean, think Kim hasn't helped me with any piece of information over the last 3 years? Of course, she has. Been very helpful, but. This is just part of sports, and and people are going to pile on, and they're going to do what they're going to do, and that's fine, and everybody's entitled to their own opinion. You guys can hang up with me and say, oh gosh, Craig's just whatever, and she got a raw deal and it sucks and she should have been the president. Absolutely fair to feel that way. I feel from my point of view, as opposed to I feel from a journalistic point of view, I think I know more about what goes on with the Marlins over the last maybe who knows how long, but at least the last 5-10 years than anybody else in the country. And I feel bad for Kim, but am I outraged? Am I yelling and screaming and saying, "Oh my gosh, this is like no," because it's easy to just follow the crowd and just pile on and do all these things. Yeah. And I hope I still have a ton of respect for Kim. And again, I mean, thank goodness. I was getting worried that maybe something happened and she got back to me there. But a couple years from now, barring some crazy change in life, we're not going to be talking about this.
Of course. Sports is the only industry where people are emotionally attached to other business people that don't care about you, So I guess you can't blame some of the fans for being quote unquote outraged.
The final thing I'll say on this topic, I could care less about the national opinion from people that are just understandably see little bits of information and put two and two together and think it's terrible and I understand. I don't really mind what they are saying and they can be on their side, but I see it from the Marlins fans' perspective that throughout this entire history of the franchise, there's just been no continuity in like any role.
Very fair.
And this is now, I mean, just like Michael Hill, but probably even more so, this is another instance where something good happened. There was something positive to celebrate. And then on the heels immediately of that, there's once again a big change. Whether it proves to be the right thing or not, like in this moment, it's really painful for these fans that felt like they knew that continuity is very important. A lot of the best franchises in sports have that continuity, and the Marlins have been really as far on the wrong side of that spectrum as any other franchise. I think it's a big reason why this fan base is so tortured, why this fan base is so small, because some people, there are going to be people that were Marlins fans that are going to check out for some period of time because of this decision.
I disagree with that. I disagree with that completely. I agreed with everything you said until the end. I think we'll be back next year. The weather will be beautiful in February and March. Spring training will happen. They'll bring in a couple free agents. They'll win a few games. You guys will be talking about Nick Ahmed. What the hell? Why is he the shortstop? This is the kind of stuff that's going to be happening. People love the game. People love talking about it. And this is going to go away. I'm absolutely positive of that happening. I can't guarantee you there's going to be success. Eli, I don't know the answer to that. But all of these big stories, they go away. People do not forget. I'm sorry. People do not talk about right now. Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Chicago White Sox, bringing Tony La Russa out of retirement to manage the Chicago White Sox, who Tony, I have a ton of respect for, Hall of Famer. Love Tony La Russa. Think he was an amazing manager and is in the Hall of Fame. Ton of respect. It was a horrendous decision. And maybe part of that and then they fired their president, and then they fired their GM. And Eli, in a couple of years, we ain't going to be talking about that either. And we're not even talking about Tony La Russa anymore. It all goes away, man. It just does. It just does.
Before we let you go, Craig, Jorge Soler and Josh Bell, in or out?
I haven't even checked on this stuff yet, but Soler will opt out. I don't know if he'll be re-signed. I think the Marlins have interest of bringing Josh Bell back, but I don't know if he's going to opt out or not. I don't know the answer to that, and I've already started working on that, but then I had to stop with everything this week. So I'll guess both out.
Both out. All right.
Just a guess. Just a guess. I don't know. I just a guess.
Yeah, it's just hard to think that Josh Bell would be able to get more than $16.5 million for 2024, but maybe he's looking to go back home towards Cleveland.
Josh Bell will get a 2-year contract from someone.
Maybe Miami.
Absolutely.
Okay, I guess that's
in my
good.
opinion.
Miami needs that switch hitter type with power and decent play discipline that they've been lacking for the last 6 years. But
yeah, they do. But Josh Bell's owed 1 year for 16. You're telling me he can't get 2 for 30 or 2 for? I mean, I don't know.
2 for 20, 2 for 28, maybe.
It seems like an easy thing. To me, it seems like an easy opt out for Josh Bell, and less AAV but more money. At least that's the way that I view it. And again, I don't put too much into what was said at the end of the year, but he didn't exactly go Marlins.
Right, exactly.
At the end of the year too.
I'm sure he wasn't leaning that way before the trade to Miami because he was having a bad end of last year with San Diego and a bad beginning with Cleveland. But I guess.
Yeah, look, I again, like this week, Isaac, just to be honest, like it's just been nonstop calling and texting, even today, even yesterday. I mean, I basically want it to go away and I want it to be done. But I know you guys asked me to do this. I know you asked me to do it a few days ago.
Yeah.
And so I've always been generous with my time with this stuff. And I did 2 other stations today. I'm doing one in St. Louis tonight. I've pushed everybody back to today. So, let's get it done. And then, it's going to be time to move on soon.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate the time. We know how busy you are, especially this time of year. So with that, we'll end it here. For Eli, for myself, for Alex Carver, and for Craig. Craig, thank you guys so much. And as always, go Fish.